Well, this is an exciting time for the Miawpukek First Nation. They're marking the 25th annual powwow. I'm here in the Great Hall, the council chambers, with someone who's been around for quite a while, since long before the very first powwow. Chief Misil Joe, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Oh, thank you for coming to our community.
So tell us about this powwow. I can feel the excitement around town. How are people feeling about it?
I think everybody is anxious for the powwow because it is coming out of a long 2 year of COVID, and we keep going to the starter line and saying, no, we got to cancel because of COVID.
Take me back to that first powwow and why you decided to start this tradition.
Because it was in our ancient past, when you have a good year, and that's what a powwow is. You've had a good year, and you want to share that good fortune with your family and friends and neighbors. So powwow is when you invite people to come into the community comes out and cooks and feeds whoever wants to be fed during the powwow. And it's an alcohol and drug free powwow, so kids are running all over the place. Everybody's watching them. So that's how we started. But to draw a crowd, the first time we decided to hold a traditional healing conference. And that brought in a lot of people.
Yeah, how many people?
Oh my God, we must have had over 3,000 people the first powwow.
What was that like?
That was incredible to see our kids. Not so much the first year. The kids came out in the regalias. The parents sort of was a little bit standoffish, not sure if they should get involved or not. But the following year, everybody was in regalia. Parents was out to dance and with their kids, and we hit on something that's really meaningful for the community, and so we've been doing it ever since. And then after that, Flat Bay decided they were going to have a Flat Bay, have a powwow, so we supported them, and so we go back and forth between here and Flat Bay when we can, and to support them in their powwow too as well.
Why is the powwow such a meaningful event for the people in Conne River?
Spirit lifting, I think, and we set up sweat lodges for men and women, and the conversation a lot of times is in Mi'kmaq language was outlawed in this community in the 1920s. So to have people from Nova Scotia and other parts of the Maritime show up speaking the language is always good for us to hear that, and continuation of an old tradition going back to the 1900s when a man from here left and he went to Cape Breton with the news from this community, and that was sent up to Lestegouche in Quebec, and it was written up in French or Mi'kmaq, then sent back down for us, telling the stories of Conne River for the past year or so. And I got my hands on one of those copies, and it was all in that one was in Mi'kmaq, and I couldn't read it, so I took it to a friend of mine in Escazone, and he read it out to me about a man and his two sons that went hunting in the spring and never came back. And finally they went to look for them, and they were all dead. Some accident somewhere along the way. I don't know. Lots of speculation what could have happened. But anyway, they drowned in the river. So that's old history that we have never had access to, because we've never written our own history, and we had to rely on those kinds of horrible stories. And the powwow is a social gathering. It's a spiritual gathering. As an opportunity for the community to come together and share in that good fortune, and also, marriages do take place from powwows.
Oh, so, at the powwow?
Well, yeah, I've done some marriages at the powwow, but also, we live on an island, and when young girls show up, or young men, sometimes they leave the community, and one in particular went to Nova Scotia, now fluent in Mi'kmaq. Mm-hmm. And so those kinds of connections is important too as well.
Romances can bloom
Romantic
at the...
symbolism at the powwow, absolutely. I support that.
Fantastic. And can we talk about how the community has changed over those years? You were talking about the 1920s and the language ban, and there's been a real push over the past few years to revitalize the Mi'kmaq language in Conne River. Can you talk about that?
Well, you know, it's and that's probably one of the saddest things in our history is that we had one priest who showed up here in the 1920s and outlawed the language actually from the church, and we did have a Mi'kmaq teacher at the time teaching Mi'kmaq how to write and read Mi'kmaq, and of course he fired her and brought in someone that spoke only English and forbid anyone to speak language in the church or the school. So then he got into a conflict with the chief, Newell Jador, who left with his family, went to Nova Scotia and never come back until his family came back in the 70s, or something like to visit once in a while. I still remember they're all gathering, there must have been half a dozen of them or more, gathering on the beach and talking Mi'kmaq. It sounded like I did. When we were growing up, we heard the language. My grandfather spoke it, and my mom spoke the language, and my dad and other people in the community. So I had that really, really deep connection of loneliness was gone. They were here.
And what is being done now to help end that legacy from those days and to get rid of that loneliness?
I think what we're doing now is teach language in the school, not all the way up to grade 12, but we're not quite there yet. We're still in the mode of learning the language ourselves. And when we get enough fluent speakers and teachers, then we can actually go into the school and do language in school. Well, that's not the most important part. It's an important one, but what's more important is that we have an immersion program where families can learn to speak the language, because right now when kids go home in the evening after school, their parents can't speak the language. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's some of them that know some words, but that's going to be the key to revival of our language is immersion. I mean, you look at what French have done in terms of French immersion, and in other parts of the world where language was almost lost or gone, and it was brought back through immersion.
How important are the young people in the community right now? We were speaking with some of the people who do the regalia and make the moccasins, and everyone was saying it's so important to find young people to help carry on these traditions. And even with the language, like you were saying, in the schools, how important is the role of youth right now?
I think that's a part of our own identity as Mi'kmaq people in Newfoundland, the language itself and the culture. The powwow is all a part of that. The craft store. When you look back into our history, my grandmother made skin boots from caribou skin and sold them for $2 a pair. And she made them kind of fancy and to get more money, and if you can call $2 more money. But our people lived off the land. They used caribou for shelter, for food, and for transportation. So all that is part of our history. And I guess there's some things you can say in English that you can't say in Mi'kmaq, and that's important because we need to understand, and our kids need to understand how important the language is.
Like what?
You're probably speaking more from your heart, or seeing from your heart in the language. Mm-hmm. So that there is a difference that we need to understand about the language. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes it's the tone. I know my granddaughter, we raised her, and I taught her what language I knew, and if I wanted to do something or get away from it, I would say jigulazi, which is get away. And sometimes she didn't always listen until I changed the tone of what a jigulazi, the gay, which get away now. And if I raised my voice a little bit, that was it. She knew that was her third warning. Jigulazi, the gay, it's get away now.
Nuances with the language.
Yeah, that's right. And and people that ask you, Medalwaland, how are you? Some people got into the lazy part and say mubad, which is not bad. And if you're really having a good day and somebody asks you, that's muchkachoe, and the very best.
Do you have a phrase in Mi'kmaq that you love in particular?
Jigalazi, get away.
Well, Chief Mizel Joe, it's lovely to speak with you. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming here in this cold, wet day and talking to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Valeu.